I came to Istanbul to escape grief. 3 months later, I was standing on a ferry beside a man I loved, trying to decide whether needing him would save me or destroy me completely. And the worst part, I still don't know if I made the right choice. I didn't know any of that when I first arrived. The first thing I noticed about Istanbul was the ferries. Not the call to prayers, the ferries. Before sunrise, their horns rolled across the Bosphorus, shaking the windows of my apartment in Cihangir, like something alive was moving through the bones of the city. At first, I hated it. Then one morning, I realized something worse. I was actually waiting for it, because it was the only sound that got me out of bed. But what I didn't know was something else in this city was about to wake me up in a completely different way. By then, I was 38 years old, widowed, nearly 3 years into grief that no longer felt like sadness. It had now become routine. Wake up, function, and repeat. My husband's name was Daniel. He died on a highway outside Santa Fe during a rainstorm. A drunk driver crossed the median and knocked him down. Daniel died instantly. I had survived because I stopped over for a coffee 10 minutes earlier. People think grief is intense. No one tells you it becomes ordinary. And that's where it starts to change you in ways you don't notice until it's too late. I didn't come to Istanbul for architecture. I came because a cultural journal offered me a year-long assignment documenting restoration projects across the city. And Istanbul sounded far enough away that I could disappear inside it. But the problem with disappearing places is this: they don't erase you. They just introduce you to different versions of yourself you weren't ready to meet. And I was about to meet one of those versions sooner than I expected. He was standing on an unstable scaffolding inside a half-restored Ottoman hamam in fatigue, arguing with construction workers, holding blueprints like the building had personally offended him. I raised my camera, and he noticed immediately. "Careful," he called down. "If that being false, your article becomes much more interesting." The other workers laughed. I lowered the camera, looked up, and something about him unsettled me instantly. Not because he was loud, but because he saw me too quickly, and I had no idea why that mattered so much. "Kemal Ahmed," he said, climbing down, covered in dust. "Elena Brooks, American?" "That obvious?" I asked. He studied me a second too long. "You look like someone planning an escape route." That should have ended it. It didn't, but that was my mistake number one. But the real mistake hadn't even started yet. For 2 weeks, everything stayed professional. I followed him through collapsing mansions along the Bosphorus, forgotten courtyards behind markets, Byzantine walls being swallowed by time. Kemal spoke about buildings like they were living bodies. "With old structures," he said once, "collapse doesn't happen suddenly. It starts years earlier." I adjusted my lens. "You're not talking about buildings?" I asked. With a faint smile, he said, "No." And that was the first moment I stopped being sure what this assignment was really about. The next time I saw him, he was standing beside a parked car, arguing quietly with a woman outside a restoration site in Balat. elegant, controlled, familiar with him in ways I wasn't. When she noticed me approaching, her expression changed slightly. Not jealousy. Assessment. "This is Eileen," Kemal said carefully. "My ex-wife." Ex-wife? She won't settled badly inside me. Then she kissed him lightly on the cheek before leaving. And suddenly, I understood something uncomfortable. I knew almost nothing about the man I had already started emotionally depending on. That should have been enough warning for me. Instead, it only made me more attached. That night, he walked me home through rain-darkened streets. "You never mentioned your ex-wife," I said. "We have daughters together," he answered. I stopped walking immediately. "Daughters?" "True," he said again. Something shifted inside me there. Not because he had children, but because I realized how easily I had mistaken emotional intimacy for actual knowledge. "You never asked," he said quietly. And the worst part was, he was right. I avoided questions because questions create consequences. And somewhere beneath all my careful distance, I already knew Kemal was becoming emotionally dangerous for me. And yet, I was already starting to want him anyway. I tried to step back after that, but distance stopped working. Because now, I was noticing everything. How he paused before talking about his family, how responsibility shaped even the way he stood. And he was noticing me too, how I disappeared emotionally while standing right in front of him, how I avoided anything that got permanent, and neither of us liked what that meant. After that, everything changed, not dramatically, but quietly. Worse, a hand lingering too long, a glance held too long, silences that stopped feeling empty, and I responded to all of it. Because grief had frozen me for so long, I had forgotten what wanting someone felt like, and I didn't realize I was already past the point of no return. The first almost kiss happened on a ferry at night. Wind cutting across the Bosphorus. Istanbul glowing behind us. Kemal reached up to move my hair from my face and stopped himself. That restraint hurt more than the touch ever could. "You're careful," I whispered. "I'm trying to be," he said. "With me?" "No, with the both of us," he answered. Then his phone rang. Family emergency. And just like that cherished moment disappeared. But something inside me didn't. On the contrary, something else appeared inside me. The night he invited me to meet his family was when I realized how little I actually understood about his life. He mentioned it casually. "My mother cooks too much," he said. "If you don't come, we all suffer." The day came and I went. I stood frozen near the doorway while his mother hugged me warmly, despite barely speaking English. And suddenly I understood something. Back in America, grief isolated me. People visited briefly after Daniel died, then slowly disappeared back into their own lives. But here, loneliness itself seemed almost impossible. Kemal, his mother, and 2 daughters all lived, loved, and laughed together. Later that night, We stood alone on the balcony. "Why did your marriage end?" I asked. "Eileen wanted a different life," he said. "That sounds vague." I replied. "It is vague," he answered. "She still visits sometimes," he said, "for the children." Their former marriage still connected to his family. Suddenly, I understood something terrifying. No matter how close we were becoming, his life already had roots, deep ones, and I didn't know if I was capable of living inside something that permanent. And that was the most dangerous part of all. After that, everything changed. His hand as my back crossing crowded streets, fingers brushing mine during tea, eye contact lingering 1 second too long. And God, I responded to all of it. But that terrified me. Grief had frozen me for so long. I had almost forgotten desire could still exist inside my body. Then one night, I kissed him. I immediately regretted how natural it felt, because now there was no pretending this was just an experience. It was real. When I finally saw him again, I arrived unexpectedly at his apartment and found Eileen in his kitchen, comfortable in a way I was never meant to witness. That was the moment I almost ran. That night, I nearly booked the flight back to New York, but I stayed, and staying changed everything, even before I understood what it was changing me into. Then winter came hard, cold rain, empty streets. We started spending nights together, carefully, like two people afraid of what closeness might cost. But one day, out of the blues, New York called. The magazine wanted me home by summer. No extension, no negotiation. Suddenly, our relationship had an expiration date, and both of us knew it. For days, Kemal refused to talk about it. Finally, one day, I snapped. "Say something," I told him. He stared out the apartment window. "What do you want me to say?" "I want to know whether this matters to you," I snapped further. His expression hardened instantly. "You think it doesn't? But you act like if we ignore this long enough, it disappears," I immediately told him. Kemal looked away, and in that moment, I understood something unbearable. He loved me deeply, but not enough to destroy the life he already had. And somehow, that hurts more than every argument combined. Then finally, I asked the question I had avoided for months. If I stayed, would that make you happy? And for the first time, Kemal had no answer. And I also did not know if staying would also make me happy. With his ex-wife still in the picture, did I want to stay? It was then I realized that what we shared was the kind of love that doesn't resolve. It only divides. If you were in my shoes, would you stay? Or would you go back to continuing your life in New York?